That was really loud this time, Amy. Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 62. I think that's correct, of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County. I'm your host, Stephen Long, and we are coming to you once again from the international headquarters of GSM Services as we continue to look forward to having some great discussions in the coming weeks and months. We simply believe in discussing more of the reasons why Gaston's great. We are highlighting another great organization and have Doug Lance with us today. Doug is the Executive Director of ACPP Incorporated. So I'm going to let him kind of explain when we get there what all that is. And we're going to have maybe a little bit of focus on Cornerstone Christian Center here in Gastonia. But, we want to maybe touch on everything that Doug has going on. But, Doug, it's great to have you on, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. So we could actually go back a way. We could talk about some old sports and here in Gaston County, but we're going to try to stay focused on your organization. So, if you don't mind, Doug, just tell us a little bit about yourself, the organization, Cornerstone Christian Center, along with ACPP, just anything you'd like to share.
Okay. Well, I came to Gaston County from down in the mountains in 1977,
okay,
and I was recruited to come here. Actually, I was tricked into coming here by my mentor, James Barker, who ran the Boys and Girls Club on the Red Shield Club, Salvation Army Club on Marietta Street.
Yep.
And Jim was known as Mr. Boys Club, and I had met him at a conference, and I was the executive director of the Boys Club in Asheville.
Okay.
And we had met, and I really liked him, and apparently he liked me, because about a month and a half after we had met, he called me and he said, would you like to come to Gaston County? And I was thinking, haven't really ever thought about it. And then he said, we talked, and he said, I kind of like the way that you view youth and the things that you do, and I'd like to offer you a position, but he said, I'm going to warn you, I'm not going to pay you anything. I'm going, well, that kind of throws a wrench in it. But I came here specifically, was brought here to start soccer in this county.
Okay.
And came in 77. We started in 78 at the Red Shield, and eventually, before Mr. Barker's death in 1982, we were fielding 40 some odd teams in youth soccer just at the boys clubs.
Yeah.
And after Mr. Barker passed away, I stayed at the club for a few more years, and then God had other plans for me. And this position that I hold now with ACPP Incorporated, I'm the original executive director. I wrote the 501c3 for it in 1987.
Oh, wow.
And I've been with them ever since. We operate 7 different programs within our organization. We do all of the jail treatment services here in the county. We run Gaston County Court Services. We have the Restorative Justice Center, which is a free outpatient drug and alcohol treatment counseling center on Franklin Boulevard, and of course Cornerstone Christian Center on East 5th Street, which is a inpatient residential treatment center for men 18 and above.
Okay. And
that has kind of been the place where I believe God wants me to end my career. Not leaving it, but I believe, when I pass away, that's probably going to be where I'm at. But it's a residential program. We can handle up to 20 men at a time. It's 24/7. It's an awake facility. In other words, someone there on staff is always awake. And we're there to meet the needs of those men, to put structure back in their life, to hopefully help them recover and to recenter their lives. It's kind of like taking care of babes, because the guys that we get that come to us to Cornerstone are a lot of them we have to watch them 24 hours a day when they first get there, because they're coming from places like detox, jail, off the streets.
Right.
Not very healthy, but the average man stays with us about 6 months and they gain 35 pounds because we feed good. But it's been probably the most rewarding experience of my life, to be there and to see the changes that God makes in these men's life. You know, a lot of people say, you know, you really do a great job. You know, and the only thing that I can say is we just do a great job providing an opportunity.
Right.
And these guys do the work, and it's been very rewarding for us. But we'll average this year. We normally average around 5,000, working with 5,000 addicted people across the board with ACPP. This year it's going to be a lot higher. But 5,000 people in Gaston County represents a very small percentage of those that are addicted. But, you know, what we're concentrating on is those people that are ready, willing, and able to change and become productive citizens. And that's what we're looking for. I'm looking for somebody that's going to say, I'm willing to do anything that it takes.
Is that what you find it takes, though? Someone has to make that decision, or has to, you know, have someone helping him to, so when you find them or they're sent your way, they have to have that, you know, mindset, or are you able to take somebody who's kind of maybe on the fence and then, you know, help be the catalyst for that?
It's a little of both.
Okay.
But, you know, what I'm really looking for is that person that's ready to change. You know, if I mean, all they've got to do is say help, you know, and I'm there for them, you know.
Right.
And as long as they're trying, I'm going to give them everything I've got, and my staff will too. That's the one thing I think that has set our nonprofit apart from other organizations. And I'm not saying other people don't have great employees, but, you know, we have some really top-notch people in all the programs, and they really work hard to try to help people succeed. So
before we move on, I just want to do one quick shout out to our original connection is, and through my dad as well, was the Boys and Girls Club in Marietta. I mean, I'm one of those soccer guys and a baseball. Well, I guess originally that would have been maybe coach pitch originally, and then baseball. And man, Witten Supply was my team, and I'll never forget that one year that we won the championship over there.
Best infield in the league. You
Larry,
and your brother.
Yeah, Larry Rainwater was our coach, and I'll tell you what, I even, you know, occasionally see some of those guys that we played with. That was a great experience. Again, I appreciate that work even before, you know, the real work was going on right here that you do now. So let's kind of, if you can you talk about some of the, you know, you mentioned some of the program. You said there's 7, I don't know if programs is the right word, but 7 initiatives, whatever you got going on within ACPP. I mean, Cornerstone Christian Center is one that I've mentioned and you mentioned, but kind of just give a broader sense of some of the initiatives you've got going on, and again with ACPP in kind of just a broader sense, if you don't mind.
Our board of directors in 1987 had a vision that we would be able to work with people from the onset of their problems. Most of the people that we work with have a criminal involvement or a court involvement of some type, and they designed the program so that when you got arrested, we would be there in the jail. And if you wanted help, we would hear you when you were in the jail. And what we would do is help you to find the services that you need. What we found in 1987 was the services weren't there.
Gotcha.
And so what the board decided to do then was create the services. And that's how things like the Restorative Justice Center. Okay. There was everywhere that you went for treatment at that time, you had to pay for the services. And what the board, they had the vision that, you know, if a person wanted help, and as long as they complied with the rules and were willing to progress in their recovery, they could come for free. And we still, you know, operate on that same premises that, you know, if you want help, we're there to help you. And, you know, the best time to help somebody is when they're in crisis. That's when people wake up and say, you know, they wake up in jail or they wake up, and they say, man, something's just not right. And that's when we grab them. And so then at that time we also had a program called Community Penalties, which went with people through the court process and actually did background investigations for the judges. We worked directly for the Superior Court judges, and we completed reports on the people that were coming in front of them and told them, all their problems. We didn't shine the apple up at all.
Right.
I used to tell Judge Kirby when I first started, I'd say, I have some roses in the garden, but they all have thorns.
Yeah.
And if you're gonna be in the garden, you got to accept the thorns. And I've seen a lot of people get well over the years through the process, and I've seen a lot of people not get well, and I've seen a lot of people die. And addiction everywhere is a problem. Yeah. But we don't roll over and give up. We just got to keep fighting. In 2011, my board met in September, and said, we've just about got the thing completed. The only thing we lack is a residential program. And they instructed me at that time to find out if anybody wanted to partner with us. And of course, there was only one place, and that was Cornerstone in the county. And they said, if they don't want to partner, then we'll build a place, we'll build a program, because that's what we do. Yeah. And I went that next week. I called the executive director and the board chair, and they were shocked, that we would, because they were planning on closing.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
And we worked out a deal, and in the spring of 2012, we went into Cornerstone and been there ever since. We were housing around 20 people before COVID hit. When COVID hit, it affected everybody.
Sure.
But what we did is we cut back to 10 instead of 20. Every man has his own room. They think there's a Taj Mahal, but they're not. But anyway, they all have their own room. If we get an infection or whatever, we're able to control it that way. And we have protocols that are in place. But the thing that I'm really proud of is in 2014, we started working with Voc Rehab here in the county. And we have had 100% employment for all of our guys since 2014, ever since we started that relationship. And GSM is part of that. Yeah. I probably got maybe 15 guys that have graduated Cornerstone that are working here at GSM. Yeah. And listen, most of our guys don't have skills, but even the ones that didn't have skills, you guys have trained them and worked with them. And by and large, it's worked out. We've had a few people that have not done well, sure. But we've also had some
that's also with the general workforce.
Right. But we've had a few that, I see them every now and then. They'll come by and they'll say, I'm still at GSM, man. I'm enjoying it. They're really learning a lot and teaching me. But the most important thing for us and for me is I believe that if a man gets his heart right, everything else follows.
Right.
And I believe that I'm not fool enough to think that everybody is going to turn to God and that's going to be their answer, because people recover in all different kinds of ways. But for me, a relationship with God straightens everything out. If you get your heart right, everything else will follow. It'll come right behind it. And that's been the edge, over the years.
Right.
And we've got a lot of churches involved. Churches feeding our guys, contributing to our guys, clothing our guys.
I know that at one time First Methodist was involved. That's my church.
Mm-hmm. Still are.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Not as much since COVID started, but they're getting ready to start back.
Good. Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. Is something we've experienced or heard as we've done these podcasts the last year and a half now almost, is how did COVID affect the need? Have you seen an increase in just the addictions in general and the need for your services, or is that something that's been kind of just steady, and when you also, before you answer that, maybe you said 5,000 earlier, and that was a small percentage of, to make sure I heard you right, that's a small percentage of the overall addictions in Gaston County.
About 18%.
That's scary, isn't it?
Oh,
yeah. Because as someone who, I'm involved in a lot of community things, but that's a statistic I have not heard.
Well, most people won't admit that they're addicted, and a lot of people don't even know they're addicted.
Gotcha.
You know, and you can't just look at somebody and say, well, you're an alcoholic. You know, they have that's a realization that you have to come to. And there are a lot of people that are functioning addicts and functioning alcoholics. They go to work every day. But they depend on that level of medication, and it's gotten a lot worse since COVID.
Okay.
Basically, the courts shut down. Nobody was going to court for a long time. Probation offices shut down, and kind of what we did was just let everybody go home and use drugs. So they did.
Wow. Yeah.
And now we're reaping that. I mean, I don't want to paint a picture of bleakness, but our challenges today are far greater than they were on the front side of COVID, because we were just moving along at a great clip, and then when COVID hit, it just seemed like
it really limited what you could do, probably, and then on top of that, coming out of it, there's just more need.
Right, and plus, you know, our staff working with the population that we do, we were exposed, and you know, we shut down for a little while at the Restorative Justice Center and did Zoom counseling with them. And that's just not the same.
Right.
But then we decided in 2021, I said, you know, this is enough. I'm tired of this. We need to get back and start touching people again. And so I said, I'm opening everything back up on July 1. And so we opened everything up, and 3 weeks later, I had 4 out of 5 staff members at the RJC that had COVID. And they were just looking at me and said, see what happens when you reach out and touch people. I'm sorry, you know, but overall, we haven't missed a lick. You know, our numbers kind of went down for a little while, but they're coming back. You know, as people are remaking contacts, and I think this year we're going to go over 6,000 people that we'll be working with.
Wow,
which you know, it increases every year generally. It held solid in 21 and part of 20, but it increases.
Okay, so let's kind of maybe shift gears just a little bit and can you talk about some of the successes you've seen? I mean, obviously I don't want to get into specifics of individuals, but just think back. I'm sure you have, because you just mentioned, you know, what you've seen is people's successes. You've seen people ongoing, and you've seen people that frankly that didn't survive their addiction. So maybe share a success story or two that you look back and say, wow, that was a really impactful story or individual that I saw from start to getting back into. I'm not sure how to describe that, but you know, anything you can share there for our listeners, maybe to.
Back in the mid '90s, worked with a guy who everybody just wrote him off. You know, even the court system wrote him off, and we advocated for him. And I placed him in long-term treatment outside of the county. And so I kind of lost track with him for a while. And so I'm sitting in my office in the courthouse one day, and somebody comes, the receptionist comes up and says, Doug, there's a guy here that wants to see you. And I said, what's his name? And she told me, and I said, ooh, you know, that's a blast from the past. You know, I'm wondering, you know, because you never know what you're going to, you know, because I've seen a lot of different people do different things. But anyway, when he came in, and first thing he did was come to me and gave me a hug. And he said, I know I haven't been in touch with you, just wanted to come by and show you something. And I says, well, show me. And he says, you have to go outside. And I says, okay. So I walk outside there at the courthouse in the front, and there are 4 huge trucks there with his name on the side of them. And it's Morganton, North Carolina. And I said, so this is what you've been doing? He said, listen, once I got past all of my legal problems, once I got clean, once I got sober, I realized there was nothing that could stop me.
Oh, wow.
And he said, I started this company. I got my license in electrical and in plumbing. And he said, I started this company, and it was just me and one friend. And he said, now we're up to 45 employees. And he said, Doug, I'm paying my taxes. Because I always told him, I said, if you're responsible, you do everything, but we don't let anybody work under the table with us or anything. They've got to report but he said, I'm taking care of my kids. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And that to me was probably one of the best experiences I've ever had.
How long, do you remember roughly how long it was between?
I hadn't seen him in probably 4 years.
Okay.
But he finished, the last time that I saw him, he graduated from the residential program in Asheville, and I went to his graduation. And that was the last time I'd seen him, and I asked him, I said, what's your plans? And he said, I've got a friend in Morganton that's going to help me, and that's where I'm going to go. And I said, well, we're still here if you need us. And I didn't hear from him.
Right.
But that was just a really nice surprise.
It is, yeah. Well,
get surprises like that when you need them the most.
Yeah, I'm sure there's probably many of those success stories that you may not even know about too. Later on, because of whatever reason, some people might not want to come, revisit that. But yeah, so that's a perfect example of why we asked that question, is to that is to me the ultimate success.
Yeah. We've had several guys that have left us after they've graduated or gone through the program and gone and gotten their license in substance abuse counseling.
Oh,
and
wow.
They've hung out plaques. They're working here in Gaston County. And,
okay.
They just want to make a difference, and they do. Because if you've been there and done that.
I was going to say, if it seems like that they would have a different perspective, to know a little better what somebody might be feeling or why they're dealing with something like that, where someone who's never experienced that might not have the same perspective. So, again, looking at the organization, as a whole, where do you, besides the typical answer to this question, which is, it'd be nice if these services weren't needed, what do you see, 5-10 years down the road? What do you see this organization doing, continuing to grow? Are there any big plans in the future? Or
we've got several initiatives. The main thing that I want to do before I fade away is I want to start a women's program, just like Cornerstone, because there's nothing in this county for women. I've told the judges, I've told the county this. We're partners with the county. With the court services program and partners, mental health over here, we're partners with them. And I've told them all, if I was a female in this county and I was addicted, or if I was an alcoholic, I would be suing you guys, because the services just aren't there. And, we have the women's program at the Restorative Justice Center, which is a gender-specific program. And recovery for females is so much harder because they have children, and they're responsible for the children. And they just have issues that men don't even think about. And, we've tried our best to address those issues, but the missing piece of the puzzle is having a safe place. That's what Cornerstone is. It's a safe haven, where you can say what you want, what you feel, and, you're not going to be bullied. You're protected. And that's what we need here in this county more than anything, is a female facility where they feel safe. And I know that we have the domestic violence house. I thank God for that.
Yeah.
But we need a long-term place where women and their children can come. My staff and I have talked about this time and time again. It's not good that we have to send people to Mecklenburg County or anywhere else, to get that kind of safety. But that's going to be the last hurrah for me.
Okay.
We just started a partnership initiative with partners and with Olive Branch Ministries.
Okay.
We're educating people in the jail opioid addicts. I don't know if you realize it, but Gaston County leads the state in opioid deaths. Man, this is sounding more negative all the time.
Well, we had Remembering Austin on, Austin's parents on, and
Right.
that's a good organization. But I'm also a board member of Gaston Together, which started the opioid task force
Right.
here, and so that is something I'm a little familiar with. And yes, those stats are just as astounding as the
Right.
one you shared earlier.
Well, what we're trying to do is educate the addicts that are in our jail, put them through classes, and once they are educated, and it ranges from everything from how to use Narcan, what the implications of the addiction are, just everything that's got to do with it. And then at the end of the completion of the class, they're given vouchers in their outpack with resources, and it's up to them. We don't force anybody to come, but they're given vouchers for Narcan. And what we're ultimately hoping is going to happen is that we not only educate them, but we also educate their families.
Gotcha.
And the ultimate hope is that we're going to reduce the number of deaths. And it's harm reduction, but it's also education and prevention. And this is an 18-month program, and we just now got started on it. And I'm excited about it because I think that some lives are going to be saved there.
Well, knowing what I know about the opioid issue, it is, this is the wrong phrase to use, but it's nice to see some national attention now to this fentanyl thing, because that is such a, it is such a big burden and big deal, and because that's typically what recently in the last few years is really causing a lot of the overdoses and deaths, frankly, from it. And so
problem is they're cutting everything with it now. They're using, they're putting it in the marijuana and everything. I mean, you can know your dealer and
it's such a small amount,
right? That takes nothing.
It does.
And there's more stuff coming down the pipe that's not here yet, but when it gets here, it's going to be worse than fentanyl.
Right. So yeah, I appreciate that. So that's that's interesting to hear, and I think. Your comment about a women's program, as you were saying that, I'm thinking back to all my involvement in the community organizations, and you're right. I can't think of anything that is focused specifically on that.
And it needs to be free.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I get it.
That's a resounding. I mean, you can teach people
that can be a barrier to
right, and you can teach people just like at Cornerstone. When they come there, they have nothing. They don't even have clothes. I mean, we give them clothes, we feed them, we transport them, we help them get jobs, and they become independent. You're not going to leave Cornerstone unless you have $1,500 in the bank. And the reason for that is because let's just say you leave Cornerstone, you're renting a place, and the economy tanks, or you lose your job. You have to have a cushion, and that's part of. But it can be free to teach, but as you're teaching, help them become independent and self-reliant. Because they've been independent and self-reliant, but in the wrong way.
Right.
And structure is it's one of the most important things that we teach because the folks we work with, they lack structure in their lives, not the kind of structure where your army,
yeah,
but the kind
not
of structure,
camp, but
the kind of structure that you and I face every morning. The alarm clock goes off, and we get up and we go to work because we have responsibilities, and along with the structure, they learn responsibility. But women, need that same opportunity that men have, and hopefully before I fade away, it's going to happen.
Okay. Well,
I've got a board that's they're into it.
I'll be interested to pay attention to that, Doug, and see how that goes. So, you've already, this next question I'm going to ask anyway, but you've already shared so many reasons. But why would you say, maybe in a different way, or your long-term view, or looking back on your time, going back, I think you said 1987. Why would you say, Gaston County is better because not just Cornerstone Christian Center, but ACPP, in general, is here?
Well, it's better because we affect everything. You know, when you change a person's life, you know, when you help them overcome their addiction, you break the cycle of, you know, I mean, this is just, addiction is a cycle. It just goes round and round, just like domestic violence or anything else. And when you break that cycle, you not only just break it for that person, you break it for their children. You know, they're not coming home to seeing dad or mom high, you know, or, you know, things going on in the house that shouldn't be going on. And those children have an opportunity. You know, we affect everything from foster care. I mean, a lot of the women that we come in contact with through the women's program, they've lost custody of their kids, and we help them in that area to regain. They've either lost custody or they're in foster care or a grandparent is raising them. And, you know, the whole goal is to make the person whole again and help them to become productive. And, you know, that's why I say all we do is provide that opportunity and show them how and give them the tools. They've got to elect to do that. You know, they've got to elect to use those tools. Right. And by and large, they do. You know, people, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, I think I'll be an addict. Yeah. You know, I think I'll become addicted to alcohol. Nobody does that. You know, remember when you were a kid, you and your brother, you know, were a great team in the infield. Yeah. And you know, both of you wanted to be star athletes. Yeah. I know you did. I hear you talk. Yeah. You know, and we all have dreams when we're growing up. Yeah. And alcohol and drugs, when they enter into a person's life, they don't just destroy them physically, they destroy them mentally. Right. So that, and it takes everything from you. It takes your dreams away from you. They forget how to dream. And all I want to do is teach them how to dream.
So,
again,
if I could summarize that, maybe, hope is a powerful thing, and I think you lose some of that hope, don't you, when you're in those situations of that, or optimism, right? That there is something better tomorrow.
Oh yeah.
I think that's something that I'd like to see more of. It seems like the last 2.5 years, a lot of that optimism and hope in general, it seems like, has been crushed. And you throw addiction on top of that. I mean, you know, just so again, I appreciate that very much. So, Doug, is there anything I haven't asked? You know, any questions I haven't asked that I should have, or anything you'd like to share? I mean, of course, before we finish, we'll swing back around and make sure people know how, if there's volunteer opportunities, donations, you know, just anything that to make sure our listeners are aware, you know, of how they might be able to help the organization. But anything I haven't asked, or anything you'd like to share before we move to these next?
Well, one thing I would just like to say, not many people know this about me, but everybody that knows me well knows I know you don't know this, but I'm in recovery too.
Okay.
And this is my 36th year.
Oh, wow.
In recovery. And I would tell you guys at the Boys Club, don't do drugs. And as soon as you left, I was doing drugs. I mean, I hate to say that, but yeah. I mean, I was drinking, and you know, I was a functioning alcoholic. I never missed work. I never missed school. I graduated from the Abbey. I was carrying a full load at the Abbey and working full time at the club. And I had a lot of things on me, and I drank. And so that all changed at the age of 34. I had gone 17 years. I started when I was in high school and advanced from alcohol to pain pills. In college, I played college ball and got an injury there, and drugs were so easy to get. Right. And I've been there, done that. And when this opportunity for me, it just came out of the blue. And this is not my job. This is my calling.
Right. I was getting ready to say that exact thing. That's what it sounds like. Yeah.
You know, this is you know, you look back at your life and you say, why did this happen? And I don't claim to be a great counselor or a good person or anything else, but you know, because when I do, God always steps in and says, you think you're a good counselor? You know, I had to put you in a position where you were with people that are like you to remind you where you've been, you know. And every time that I work with somebody, every time that I see these guys come into Cornerstone, I see people in the jail and in court services and at the RJC, it's just God reminding me, you know, listen, I brought you through this. I can bring them if they'll just give me an
Yeah.
opportunity.
You think that experience has helped you?
Oh,
Yeah,
there's no doubt.
with what you're doing.
No telling what I would have been had I not turned into an alcoholic at 17. I mean,
Yeah.
in my little hometown of Inca, North Carolina,
Yeah, I know where Inca is.
we
Yeah.
had one red flashing light, and everybody went up and watched the light flash on Saturday night and drank, Boone's Farm. And you probably don't even know what Boone's Farm is, but
I remember Boone's Farm.
but
Edit that out, Amy.
yeah, you might want to edit all this out. I don't know,
No.
but I started early and I rebelled, in everything, and I thought that, when I was high, that nobody could stop me,
Right.
and I was wrong.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because that is the type of thing that impacts so many people, and also, it's not just that; it's the example that just by the way you're living and what you've done in the past 34 years, if I got that number right, what you've accomplished. That's actually a good inspiration for others to see. You can come out of this on the other side and make an impact, because ultimately everything we do is about relationships and how do we impact others and how do we. Because you're making an impact, whether you realize it or not, in all your interactions. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it, apathetic? I mean, so it's something's going on, and whether you're aware of it or not.
I've lived 3 lives. The first 16 years were happy and productive, and then the next 17 were pure hell, and and everything since then has just been a blessing.
Oh, wow.
It's just been more than I ever expected.
Well, that's a terrific testimony. So, like I said, Doug, I appreciate that, and we're gonna run through these, what we call these Gaston County questions, real quick, and then we'll make sure we finish up with how we can get in touch with your organization and how our listeners might be able to help. So, this is really what your team, staff, your former athletes at the Boys and Girls Club. This is really what people want to know about you. These questions we're going to run through. Okay, this is super important. So, we're going to call this the Boys and Girls Club Speed Round of Questions.
Okay.
Because I don't have a better name for it today. So, Doug, what's your favorite Tony's ice cream flavor?
You're not going to believe this.
I bet I will.
Grape.
Doug, that is surprisingly, if you had told me before we started this how many people would say grape, I would have said, you're crazy. It is actually, it's a relatively popular answer. Matter of fact, that's my mother's favorite.
Yeah.
So that's probably the reason that it's not surprising me, is because I grew up with my mother getting grape ice cream. In fact, if I remember the story right, I hope my mother's not listening, because she might tell me I'm completely wrong, because you know how we remember things when we're kids, right? It seems like my dad telling me that when she was pregnant with Joel, that became her thing, was wanted grape ice cream from, so that would have been back in the, mid to late 60s, Amy? A long time ago. Like 20 years before you were born?
The thing about it is, I only discovered grape ice cream from Tony's this past spring.
Really?
Really.
Oh, wow.
And up to that point, it was the old traditional butter pecan.
Well, that's interesting. So you've just named my mom's favorite and my dad's favorite.
Yeah.
The butter pecan was his.
Traditional.
Absolutely. So are you a Sundrop or Cheerwine person?
I like both, but when push comes to shove, it's always Sundrop.
Okay. Favorite local restaurant?
I'm an old school, and I ate there yesterday. RO's.
Okay. Well, the problem I have with RO's is that it's in between our two buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's so easy to stop by there, coming and going.
But it's so good.
Yeah. That was, what, the funny thing for me with RO's is the memories of just so many, going there with my dad so many times. I mean, that was, so I think every time I go, that's what I think of.
It's a reward.
Absolutely. How about your favorite outdoor activity to do in Gaston County? Favorite park, or just something you like to do here when you're not saving the world?
Fishing.
Okay. Any specific spot you like to go to?
Well, I haven't been able to go lately because of my knees. I'm waiting on 2 knee replacements. But when I go, I'll go anywhere, even if it's a mud hole, if I think I can catch something. But I'm actually a trout fisherman.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Trout fished since I was 7 years old, and I'm pretty good.
Well, if you're from Inca, that area, there's a lot of good areas up there, because I got a daughter at Appalachian State. My son just graduated from Western, so in between those, but if you go from traveling from Boone to Cullowhee and Silva, you can find a lot of good spots for
and
that
I know
kind of
them
thing.
all.
Yeah, I bet.
I grew up there. I know them all.
So this is the question, if anybody that's listening weekly knows this is just my question, and I reserve the right to ask it, and there's only one correct answer, but UNC Duke or NC State?
I received my nonprofit certification from Duke University, but it will always be Tar Heel Blue.
Oh. Come on, can you give me, Amy, can you give me a sound effect or something for that bad answer that Doug just? Thank you.
Which one is it for you?
Well, I mean, we're, the Long family in general is born and bred red. Dad was my uncle, my dad, Joel, myself, Joel's wife.
Right.
We're all NC State.
Nothing wrong with that.
My daughter went there for a couple of years before transferring. So, so we're just, we have the NC State disease, yes.
Right.
You know what? You already shared something, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. Is there something else that very few people know about you this year? But that was a pretty big one, so I appreciate you doing that.
I'm
earlier.
an open book. I mean, what you see is what you get. I mean, there's nothing fancy about me. You won't see me in a coat and tie. I'm a blue jean kind of guy, and I'm always ready to roll my sleeves up if I've got any and go to work.
Absolutely. What about, is there any book or something you would recommend, article or blog that you follow, just anything that you might share that might be useful to our listeners they might like to check out?
Well, I would recommend, if anybody, especially if they're from the Appalachian area, Hillbilly Eulogy.
Okay.
Yeah,
yep.
It was quite an
experience.
There was a movie, but it's
made,
not as good as the book.
I mean, listen,
never are.
I'm a big reader, and I don't know that I've ever found a movie that was as good as what I read.
Yeah.
I mean,
Forrest Gump was such a disappointment. I mean, I loved the movie, but the book was so much better.
I mean, there's a couple of things right now that I just recently read that were that have either TV shows or movies, and it's just not the same. Even things like, gosh, I don't know, Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit were just so different, So I appreciate that.
I love to read C.S. Eliot. I like him.
Yeah.
But C.S. Lewis.
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
But T.S. Eliot's actually, there's easy to get confused. I get those confused, but they're similar. But C.S. Lewis, I mean, in fact, I'm going to share a quote at the end of each episode here, and I've quoted C.S. Lewis 3 or 4 times through these podcasts.
Smart man.
I think, just this past year I read, Mere Christianity of his, which is a really good, it's a good book, and it's, that's what he wrote that in the 30s or 40s, right. And it still applies today. So listen, I appreciate you indulging us on those Gaston County questions that we like to ask. So just a couple more questions, Doug, and we'll finish up here. So, and again, remember, this is a podcast about Gaston County and why we think it's such a great place. So how would you answer this question? Besides, your organization, ACPP, I mean, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
Got to be the people. The people here, things might look rough sometimes, it might get bad sometimes, but the people always rise up and they always make a difference. I can't tell you the number of times that we've just been at a low point and somebody just out of nowhere just shows up, and they just somehow, I don't know, it just seems like people in this community sense where the needs are, right. and they meet those needs. And listen, it doesn't matter what it is. I mean, these people come to help people and assist, and they're not afraid to do it. That sets Gaston County apart, I think, from any other place I've lived. Yeah,
I've been involved, intentionally in community organizations going back to probably 2000 or so, late 90s and early 2000s, and that's been my experience. And just this podcast as an example, I mean, this is episode number 62. We've got episodes scheduled to record all the way into December. So it's just, there's so many people and organizations that are here specifically doing work, to help the community. And then in a broader sense, and then that's just the organization, not to mention all the volunteers that are required, to keep some of these things going. So again, I appreciate that greatly. So last question. Knowing what you know now, Doug, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
If I was 20 years old, I would advise myself to go to Stanford University and meet Bill Gates and bring him coffee or whatever else he needed. No,
oh, wow, that's good.
I would just, my 20-year-old self, I'd say relax, and relax and enjoy the ride, because it's been up and down, and it's just recently, that I've learned to enjoy the ride. I've got 8 grandkids.
Do you really? Oh, wow.
And 3 great grandkids, and listen, I'm enjoying the ride.
That's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Are they here close to you? Okay, so you get to see them a good bit.
All but one are living here in Gaston County.
Well, that's great. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good. So, Doug, this has really been good. So where can so again, remember our point here is to bring awareness to your organization, and so where can people go to find more information out? Are there volunteer opportunities? Are there ways that individuals can donate, or just anything you want to share related to that?
Our website is under construction now. We recently just revamped it, and so it's under construction. But the address is ACPP in NorthCarolina.org.
Okay.
It should be up within the next few weeks. They can visit our Facebook page, the Cornerstone Facebook page. They can get some help there. Call me directly.
Okay.
We do not just accept volunteers off of the street.
Oh, absolutely.
Most of our volunteers are people that have been through our program.
Okay.
That have come back to mentor. And I've got one right now that came in yesterday and says, "Hey, I'm going to cut your grass." I said, "Great."
Well, that's good. First, I just want to, I know with my involvement through organizations, say my church, the United Way, Community Foundation. I mean, I'm been aware of the work you've been doing for a very long time, and so I do appreciate. Just on a personal note, I appreciate the work you do, and I have seen personally the impact that your organization has had. So, I want to thank you for that, and I also want to thank you for your time today, and hopefully this will bring some awareness. Maybe there's a family out there that might hear this, and they have someone that that you might can help, and and that would be that would make all this worthwhile if we were somehow able to help a family or an individual through this. So we're going to finish up this episode, and like normal, I'm going to do my book recommendation and a thought for the week, and my book recommendation is an author that I've shared more than once, but one of his more recent books is John Gordon. One of the more recent books is called Row the Boat. And if you're a sports fan, and I kind of was intentional picking this one because I go back a little ways with Doug on the sports here, youth sports here locally, but he wrote that in conjunction with the University of Minnesota football coach P.J. Fleck, and it's a good, if you're into just teamwork and leadership on teams, it's a good short and worth the read. And my quote for the week is one on happiness and attitude, and somebody I've quoted more than once is Abraham Lincoln, is one of my favorites. And he said, "Most folks are about as happy as they make up their minds to be." So similar to some of the things that Doug mentioned through the podcast about, somebody gets it right in their heart and then they're ready for change. And, a lot of that just comes from, attitude. Unfortunately, sometimes maybe some people have to get to that rock bottom place or some event has to happen. But I think Doug has shared some examples, and even him personally is a good example of how you can overcome that and just have impact on so many other people. So to our listeners out there today, thanks so much for listening to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast, and please don't hesitate to contact us here at our email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We are always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at our website, which is gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. Share our episodes if you see them online, and continue to give us good ratings because that helps get the podcast noticed. Thanks again to Doug Lance for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Amy Anderson from GSM Services and edited here locally by the Sumner Group. I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.